Part 30. I have done all the evil things in the world. The two sat and rested at the table set in the back garden. While drinking hot coffee, eat Western-style square cakes sent by the servant. After a short break, a servant came over and said, "Chief, I have your phone numbers calling. Bai Xuelan has recovered from his injury in the past few days and has started to handle some backlogs of official duties by the General Administration of Customs." The number of calls gradually increased when I heard the servant make the report. He stood up and went to the study to answer the phone. Xuan Huaifeng also stood up quickly and asked, "I'm afraid it's official business. Or I'll go with you." Bai Xuelan didn't want him to be too tired, so he laughed and said, "What important business can I have at this time? You have only eaten half of the cake. Stay here and finish it, I will come when I go." After that, he left. After a while, he came back. He sat down opposite Xuan Huaifeng, his black eyes shining like jewels with playful light. Stared at Xuan Huaifeng, and asked slowly, "Are you taking advantage of my injury to hide something from me?" Xuan Huaifeng was stunned and asked, "What did I hide from you?" Bai Xuelan said, "Has Bai Yunfei been here before? He asked you to pass me a few words, is there any such thing? I heard about Qizhen's illness that day, and there were many more things that followed. And I forgot about it." Immediately, the feeling of sitting idle was gone, and he quickly put the small porcelain plate and silver fork on the table, sat up straight, and said frankly, "It's mine. Isn't it? I'll tell you when the new show is on, and I'll ask you if you're going." "Was he the one who called just now?" Bai Xuelan said, "It's not him. You made me miss a new show for nothing." Xuan Huaifeng looked embarrassed and flushing. He originally promised Bai Yunfei to deliver the words. But now he has made such a mistake of being unbelievable, and it is only his own embarrassment. Really? Why did something go wrong with Bai Yunfei? It was as if he deliberately concealed it. Bai Xuelan glanced at Xuan Huaifeng, and added with a smile, "You don't want me to interact with him, that's fine. At that time, I told people that I wouldn't go there, so I wanted to say hello. Why hang people? Can't get on or off? You know, on the night of the show, he actually reserved a room for me." When he answered the phone, he casually mentioned something, which made me feel embarrassed. Xuan Huaifeng froze in the chair for half a day as if he had eaten a fly, then suddenly stood up and was about to leave. Bai Xuelan also stood up hurriedly, grabbed his arm, and asked, "Where are you going?" Xuan Huaifeng's face was full of shame. "I didn't mean it, but I really forgot. Since the responsibility is on me, I will do it now. Go and call Boss Pai, clarify your grievance to him, and apologize by the way." Bai Xuelan quickly pulled him back, with a very gentle and beautiful smile on his face. "A small matter. You solemnly apologize, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? In fact, I already told Bai Yunfei on the phone that I forgot to reply to him when I was ill. If you call now, you will expose my lies. It's over." Xuan Huaifeng turned his head and stared at Bai Xuelan for a moment with his dark and agile eyes before slowly saying, "You don't have to lie about this." Bai Xuelan smiled at Xuan Huaifeng with a gentlemanly smile and make a polite gesture. Xuan Huaifeng had to sit back. At this moment, it has gradually set in the west, and the setting sun is shining obliquely from a distance. People and tables, chairs, and the flowers and trees around them seem to be immersed in a soft golden ocean. Bai Xuelan asked the servant to refill herself with a cup of hot coffee, took a small sip gracefully, and said to Xuan Huaifeng, "Since you made me miss a new play, can you give me some other compensation?" Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What compensation?" Bai Xuelan said, "Didn't Adjutant's son give you the Vatican bell? You pull a piece of music for me, and we'll be even." Xuan Huaifeng didn't expect that he would suddenly mention this, and some like this said, "Don't mention it, I'm regretting it. I shouldn't have promised adjutant son. It's harder than I thought to pick up something that I've thrown away for a long time. I tried to pull it a few times yesterday, and my hand was so raw that it was unbearable to my ears. Let me listen to you, that's a living show of ugliness." Bai Xuelan listened, and the smile on his face became wider and wider. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but ask, "What are you laughing at? Do you think I'm lying to you? It's really bad." Bai Xuelan said, "I'm just laughing at myself. It's really pitiful, I missed the show, and I can't hear the tune, what should I do?" Xuan Huaifeng showed a very confused, but also very seductive, and thoughtful expression. Then he suggested, "Why don't I invite you to a meal as an apology?" Bai Xuelan's eyes flashed, and he leaned back, leaning comfortably on the back of the chair, with his arms around his chest, looking at Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What's the meaning of this smile now?" Bai Xuelan replied, "This smile, of course, is extremely gratifying, it means extremely happy. This is the first time you invited me. Let's eat. However, I have to say first, I am a carnivore and don't eat vegetarian food." Xuan Huaifeng's ears suddenly warmed when he heard it, and Bai Xuelan's evil smiling eyes made him uneasy. Of course, he understood the meaning of the words, but Bai Xuelan didn't say it clearly. There was no way to start scolding or refuting, but instead revealed himself. "If you are silent, it will be even worse if Bai Xuelan takes it as acquiescence." Xuan Huaifeng never knew how to deal with such a romantic affair. He felt at a loss for what to do. After a while, he stood up and pretended to see the sky, and said in surprise, "I forgot the time as soon as I sat down. It's so late. I forgot the documents sent by the General Administration are still piled on the table today, these official duties." Bai Xuelan waited for so long, how could he escape easily? Taking advantage of Xuan Huaifeng's turn, he stopped him, and pulled him gently and forcefully, and then stretched out both hands. Xuan Huaifeng was trapped between the big tree trunk and Bai Xuelan's chest, and could only face to face with Bai Xuelan very close. Bai Xuelan looked at him and smiled. "What kind of official business? Isn't your biggest official business for me?" Xuan Huaifeng was suffocated by the man's breath that he hadn't seen for a long time, his heart was beating wildly. Embarrassed and startled, he barely supported and said, in broad daylight, "What are you trying to do? Hurry up and let it go, so that people can't see it." Bai Xuelan asked, "Don't you know what I want to do? Why do you, such a smart person, always pretend to be confused to me?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Okay, I'm not pretending to be confused. The right can do whatever it wants." Bai Xuelan said, "If I did whatever I wanted, I would have eaten it long ago to a lot of meat. I've endured being a vegetarian these days, can't you see? I was too hungry for too long." Seeing him put his lips close, Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly turned his face to the side, and argued with reason, "What you say is false. It's your business to eat meat or vegetarian food. Why do you consider others to be false? Your own food?" Bai Xuelan was very hungry, but he met someone who liked to talk big. "But if it is so strong, what is the difference from before? I wasted my hard work these days. I had to do some work first," and answered Xuan Huaifeng's words. "Okay, I don't see you as food. But as a lover, is that okay?" Instead, Xuan Huaifeng took a tougher attitude. "When it comes to a lover, it is more impossible. There can't be love between you and me." Bai Xuelan asked back, "Why is it impossible?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I can't have love for you in the past, and I can't have love for you in the future. It's called impossible." Bai Xuelan wanted to coax him, but to no avail. He was annoyed by what he said, and said coldly, "I don't know what it means to be impossible. You used to be full of love for Lin Qijun, but now you love him. Is it still full of love? In my opinion, not necessarily. It can be seen that people's hearts will always change. After speaking, he leaned over no matter what, and pressed Xuan Huaifeng against the tree to kiss wildly. When Xuan Huaifeng heard him mention Qijun, his words were as if stabbed by a knife. And the nerves all over his body were throbbing and hurting, so with great strength, Bai Xuelan was pushed away suddenly. Bai Xuelan took a step back, and the light in his eyes, whether it was love or lust, was even more blazing, and he rushed over again in an instant. Xuan Huaifeng raised his hand without thinking. Snapped. He slapped Bai Xuelan across the face. The sound of slapping flesh seemed to be the only sound in the back garden of the old palace, echoing through the stone colonnade wall in a thrilling layer upon layer. The two faced each other stiffly. Bai Xuelan seemed to be stunned, stood in place like a plaster statue, and in the next second, he seemed to be fully awake. The raging anger burned from the depths of his eyes to the outside, and his handsome face became extremely hideous. For a split second, Xuan Huaifeng felt that Bai Xuelan would strangle him if he raised his hand. He stepped back subconsciously, and his back suddenly hit the tree trunk behind him, causing him to frown secretly in pain. Unable to retreat, he tightened every muscle in his body cautiously, and looked at Bai Xuelan unwillingly. But although Bai Xuelan looked like he was about to rush up at any time, he didn't rush up again. With the utmost anger and disappointment, his fingers slowly tightened and loosened. Loosened and tightened. Xuan Huaifeng heard the caracalla sound of his knuckles moving with great strength in the dead silent back garden. This kind of knuckle movement is probably very able to vent some of the anger in his heart. Bai Xuelan repeated it over and over again. Slowly. The sharp light in his eyes seemed to be flattened by something and go down. The heavy breathing gradually subsided. Everything is connected. As the golden light of the setting sun dissipated, the shadow of the tree's shadow gradually faded and disappeared, and Bai Xuelan's face was no longer hideous. At the same time as the anger disappeared, an indescribable frustration came on the bench. Seeing such depression, Xuan Huaifeng could no longer concentrate on his vigilance. He slowly relaxed his tensed limbs and looked at Bai Xuelan in a complicated way. It was like drinking iced lemon juice on a winter night. The sour and cold sense of loss soaked through the bone marrow of the two of them. And even the fingertips were powerless and lost their vitality. I don't know how long it took. A little sound tapped the eardrum softly. Xuan Huaifeng listened for a moment before realizing that it was Bai Xuelan's sigh. Bai Xuelan sighed, turned around, and said something in a low voice. Even if Xuan Huaifeng pricked up his ears, he couldn't catch the words hidden in the heavy tone. Standing under the big tree, watching Bai Xuelan pacing towards the crescent gate, the pace is very slow and steady. With a sense of determination, as if he will never look back in his life. Suddenly, Xuan Huaifeng remembered the "Qixi" that Bai Xuelan once sang. I just feel that time is like an arrow, and the infinite sorrow and hatred are on the brows. Xuan Huaifeng was stunned, and he didn't know how long he had been standing under the independent tree. It gradually became dark all around, and the lights under the porch below the door were all on, far and near, and the pavilions were shadowy, and he looked like a lonely soul without a master. Finally, he moved his sore legs and took a few steps slowly, only to realize that he was heading towards Bai Xuelan's room, and he couldn't help but stop. After a while of melancholy, he changed direction and went to his room. But when he got to the wall, his footsteps stopped again. He was so upset, he didn't even know what he was doing. He shouldn't think about Bai Xuelan anymore, but he couldn't help thinking about it like he was crazy. He always couldn't understand Bai Xuelan, why it broke up when it was a good day. He felt that it takes a lot of courage and perseverance to get along with Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan is like a strange black stone cave. When you reach in, sometimes you touch gems, pearls, or a good hot meal, but sometimes when you reach in, the black stone, the hole will suddenly turn its face for no reason, and become a vice to clamp your hand, so that you can't break free. But today, he slapped the black stone hole in the face. Xuan Huaifeng's sudden fullness was unpleasant. His hand was a little numb, as if he had been pricked by a needle. And he felt uncomfortable inside and out. He suddenly felt bad about himself. He didn't want to see Bai Yunfei. He turned his back on Qijun, and he also hit Bai Xuelan, a man who was shot. I have done all the evil things in the world. Xuan Huaifeng dared to take responsibility as long as he found out that he was wrong. In an instant, he had the urge to apologize to Bai Xuelan. He changed direction again and strode in the direction of Bai Xuelan. Just halfway through, he suddenly stopped again. He knew what Bai Xuelan wanted. And he felt that he would probably become a piece of meat delivered to the door. A piece of meat, worthless and without shame. The electric light stretched his figure so long that Xuan Huaifeng felt that his heart was also deformed, and it was extremely painful. Is he a carnal animal? He used to love Qijun so deeply. But now he is alienated from Qijun. He wanted to deny that all this had nothing to do with Bai Xuelan's crazy nights, but he couldn't. So, does it mean that the seemingly noble love is easily defeated by the satisfaction of the flesh? He never knew he was such a depraved and greedy creature. Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be defeated, covering his face with trembling hands. Who's standing there? A voice suddenly sounded. Xuan Huaifeng quickly wiped the corners of his eyes and hid all his sorrows. He turned around and said hoarsely, "It's me, what's wrong?" "Oh, it's you, Adjutant Xuan?" He smiled and sighed, "It's night, why are you standing here alone?" "I saw a shadow standing still under the wall, and thought it was someone else." "You have a lot of people, but don't blame me. The chief has repeatedly instructed that security inside and outside the mansion should be strengthened." Xuan Huaifeng didn't listen to him because he saw that he was coming from the other side. So he asked tentatively, "Are you coming from the chief? What is he busy with?" The servant replied, "The chief is idle, and asked me to call Boss Pai, the one who sang opera, Bai Yunfei, and asked him to come over." Xuan Huaifeng thought that Bai Xuelan was still sulking, but when he heard it, he was surprised, and hurriedly asked, "Why did he call him here? What can he do? Isn't it just to relieve the chief's boredom?" Xuan Huaifeng's face changed slightly, but the electric light here was not clear, and the servant couldn't see it, so he was silent for a while, and said, "Since it was the chief's order, hurry up and call. I'm tired today, I have to rest early, don't tell the chief that you bumped into me here." At this point, the thoughts of apology and the like were all dispelled. Xuan Huaifeng returned to his room, closed the door, locked it inside, and sat at the desk gloomy. Sure enough, today there were documents sent by the general administration, and a large stack was neatly placed on the table. He picked up a pen, sucked up the ink, opened it one by one and slowly reviewed it. "I thought I would calm down slowly and drive away the anxiety, but I reluctantly approved about 20 copies." He was worried that he was in a bad mood. And it would be bad if he made the wrong word on the document. For a while, I felt the air in the room was oppressive, so I stood up and opened the door again. Unexpectedly, standing by the door took a few breaths of fresh air, and wanted to go out. He gritted his teeth and simply walked to the end of the Juku Bridge, standing by the water, staring at the shadow of the water in a daze. It happened that 2 guards were patrolling by, and when they approached, they saw him and they stood at attention and saluted, "Adjutant Xuan." There are guests, but he didn't visit, but the chief specially invited them here. It's the one who often came to sing opera. Xuan Huaifeng asked. Are he and the chief in the study? The guard said, no, they're all in the chief's room, and they ordered a lot of food and drinks. The chief has to send back the rickshaw waiting for people at the door. It is rumored that the guests will not be leaving tonight. Who suddenly slapped the back of his head. And his eyes were a little dark. After standing for a while, he realized that the two guards were still waiting for him, and waved, it's all right, let's go on patrol. At this moment, even the water's shadow couldn't calm the depression in his heart. Xuan Huaifeng picked up a stone from the ground, threw it into the water, turned around and went back to his room. And took out the Vatican bell sent by Adjutant's son. Walking into the small courtyard in front of the door, he held the violin in one hand, turned his head slightly, pressed his chin against the violin, and held the bow in the other. Eyes closed, the bow pulled gently on the violin strings. Depressed tones like weeping slowly drifted from the strings.